MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger. Today marks 1 year to the day that this pandemic began. On that day, fewer than 40 U.S. deaths had been confirmed. Now, just a year later, 500,000 Americans have been lost and millions of lives have changed forever. But tonight there is hope for the future. The U.S. is administering nearly 2 million shots a day. Just hours ago, President Joe Biden moved up the timeline once again, saying he hopes to have enough vaccine for every adult in the country by May 1st. Tonight, in that address to the nation, President Biden laid out those plans and paid his respects to all those who have died since the pandemic began. Natalie Brand is at the White House with more.
In his first televised primetime address, President Biden led the nation in mourning a year to the day since the global pandemic was declared.
We all lost something, a collective suffering, a collective sacrifice, a year filled with the loss of life and the loss of living for all of us.
The president also announced new steps to help bring the coronavirus under control, directing states to make all adults eligible for the vaccine no later than May 1st.
That's much earlier than expected. Let me be clear. That doesn't mean everyone's going to have that shot immediately, but it means you'll be able to get in line beginning May 1.
The president also announced at the start of May, the government will launch a new website aimed at making it easier for people to find vaccines and schedule appointments.
The speech comes the same day President Biden signed his nearly $2 trillion COVID relief package into law after Congress passed it on a party line vote.
In the coming weeks and months, I'll be traveling along with the First Lady, the Vice President, the Second Gentleman, members of my cabinet, to speak directly to you, to tell you the truth about how the American Rescue Plan meets the moment.
While acknowledging the challenges that remain ahead, the president said his goal is to put the nation on a path to getting closer to normal by July 4th.
There's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout or a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day.
That raises hope that moments like this, a Pennsylvania boy reuniting with his vaccinated grandmother, will become more common each day. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Well, today not only represents a year since the pandemic began, it also marks the day of the first confirmed single case here in Montana a year ago. Since that day, Montana has seen more than 101,000 cases, and 1,403 Montanans have now died from the virus. More than 4,600 people have been hospitalized. That number now sits at well below 100 tonight. And as of today, more than 333,000 doses are in arms, and more than 126,000 Montanans are now fully immunized. But tonight, a reminder that the pandemic is far from over, as Yellowstone County reported its 241st person to die from COVID-19 related illness. Now, our Andrea Lutz takes an in-depth look tonight at the impact on community leaders tasked with keeping us all safe.
For each of us, the COVID-19 pandemic struck differently, but just as impactful. A year ago, society was on the cusp of something bigger than all of us. And as leaders in our community were tasked with some of the heaviest decisions of all, we're looking back and learning more about why decisions were made and what personal struggles they endured.
With a vaccine in the mix and cases on the decline, Montana has lifted many COVID-19 restrictions in recent months. Yellowstone County looking much better with as little as 15 new cases a day compared to hundreds of new cases just months ago. But first, let's reflect back to March of 2020. It's a month many of us remember quite well. On March 9th of 2020, the Dow fell over 2,000 points, halting trading. On March 11th, the World Health Organization officially declared a worldwide pandemic. And it was that same day that the first COVID case connected to Montana was discovered in a part-time resident reported in Maryland. One day later, Governor Steve Bullock declared a state of emergency. But it was March 13th of 2020 where the first COVID-19 case was declared in Yellowstone County. It's a day Health Officer John Felton remembers quite well.
I was in a parking lot at Wendy's. In fact, I can just about tell you the parking space I was in. And my cell phone rang. and it was the state health department saying, "We have our first cases," and my reaction was sort of a mixed reaction of, we've been waiting, and so now we're going to do something. And so there's sort of that, the anticipation was over and we were going to do something, kind of mixed with, but what are we going to do?
That next Monday, Felton issued his first health order, shutting down bars and restaurants by 8 p.m. Even back then, he said it was the most difficult decision he's ever had to make.
I would have to titrate risk in my mind. If we do those things, we reduce the risk of spread of disease. But we increase the risk related to economic vitality and social connectedness and those sorts of things.
And his decisions were met with much criticism throughout the county.
I got a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls and a few letters. And I think what I came to is, in my position and the way I view this job, I don't have the luxury of picking one piece and saying, this is all that matters. As I said, all the good choices are gone. So every option hurts everybody to some degree. And what I try to do is figure out what's the least harmful.
But the virus was already rapidly spreading across Montana. That's when Superintendent of School District 2 Greg Upham issued a letter to parents with a number of measures the district would take to combat the spread of COVID-19.
I can remember sitting down, having dinner and watching the 5:30 news, 6:30 news, and watching it kind of come this way, almost like a winter storm, right? It was in Great Falls and now it's in Helena. Now, it's on its way.
And it was. You might remember March 14th. That's when state basketball tournaments were halted on the very night of championships. March 15th, Montana schools were ordered to close.
I reached out to the medical community immediately. Was I worried about the safety and health of our students? Oh, absolutely. Was I worried about the safety of our staff, our teachers in front of our students every day, the size of our schools, all of that?
Looking back, each of our community leaders were tasked with difficult decisions to make through the course of that first year of this pandemic.
Did you have that internal struggle at all?
Boy, I'll tell you, Andrea, just asking that question, I get emotional. By far and away, the most difficult decision in my 34 years of being in public education was a decision to go back in live instruction.
And I'd go from people saying, you've got to shut things down, you've got to close the schools, people are going to get sick, people are going to die, it's going to overload the hospitals. And when you do that, then it flips, and those people are quiet. Now the people are saying, you're going to ruin small business, you don't care about the community.
All while dealing with their own personal struggles with the virus many of us never even knew about.
You've seen health officers in Montana and public health people all over the country leaving their jobs, getting threatened. I really honestly didn't pay much attention to the ones that just sort of said, you're a dirty so-and-so. There were several that we did report to law enforcement because they were specific enough that they made me nervous.
As a superintendent overseeing the largest school district in the state, I had a family member who was in the hospital with the COVID people dying and caring for them, and then a son he and his wife were pregnant, and the COVID pieces. So I was feeling it.
The entire month of March 2020, 31 days where everything as we knew it had changed.
Now, with 10% of Yellowstone County's population presumed infected with the virus, it's likely many of us have known someone who got very sick or has even died from this virus, meaning our own understanding of the virus itself also shifted dramatically throughout the last year. In Billings, I'm Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
Thanks, Andrea. And you can watch the full interviews that Andrea did with Health Officer John Felton and Superintendent Greg Upham on our website, ktvq.com. All right, turning to Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh. And while we won't see a snowflake away from the mountains, Colorado could be measuring snow by the foot this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. It's a huge storm that's starting to move in, and we'll watch it. This is where it is now. It's starting to bring some showers in around Las Vegas and through California. It's already been hitting the mountains rather hard. As the weekend goes on, it'll start to move into Utah, Colorado, and southern portions of Wyoming, bringing very heavy snow and rain off into the Central Plains. In fact, some of those snow totals could be pretty impressive for the mountains, 2 to 4 feet of snow, and areas even including around Denver could be looking at perhaps a foot to a foot and a half of new snow, one of the biggest snow events that they have on record. So the snow will be very heavy. In fact, some of the snow rates could be up to 1 to 3 inches an hour at times. The wind will add to blizzard conditions there, making travel very unlikely. It's already canceling a lot of flights at the Denver airport. Our forecast is coming up.
Thank you. The Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter here in Billings celebrating a new partnership. The shelter is teaming up with the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office to house and reunite dogs lost in Billings and across the county. A passing of the leash ceremony took place at the animal shelter, celebrating the new partnership with the Sheriff's Office. The ceremony also highlighted the Rimrock Humane Society's 5 years of service with the shelter.
Any dog owner can attest to this. When your dog goes missing or you get that phone call that your dog is not in your yard or not in your house, it's just like your heart sinks and your family member is lost, and you hit the roads and you start looking. You're kind of in a frantic state of mind at that point of where is my dog and where do I go to look for them. And so we're really hoping that all dogs in Yellowstone County coming to the same location will ease owners' worries or their frantic state of knowing, oh, I know I can go to YVAS to look for them, or to Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter to look for them. It's so important to make those connections. We've been able to reunite dogs that have been lost for years, even here, which is amazing to see, and it fills your heart up with joy.
And the shelter wants to remind people that lost pets who have a microchip are reunited almost 90% more often than dogs who don't. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, one Montana gym aimed at helping veterans through physical and mental challenges has a reason to celebrate tonight. We're going to take you there next. And in sports, Montana March Madness marching on with tournament action from all around the state. All the highlights coming your way.